Welcome back to the Lars Larson Show. We're live here at Feet to the Fire on Capitol Hill, just a couple of blocks down from the U.S. Capitol. And I get a chance to see Frank Gaffney from the Center for Security Policy in person at least once or twice a year. It's a rare occasion, but it's nice to see your face.
It's great to be with you, as always.
I want to ask you about this op-ed that was published by the New York Times, and I want to kind of bust it up into pieces. I got some things to say about the Times, but let's start with the op-ed itself. A person who, if we take him at his word, unnamed, unsigned, so he's not taking responsibility for his own words, but if we assume that what he's saying is accurate, not only he, but he says many administration officials are deliberately working to subvert the President of the United States. Now, Frank, I'm careful when my callers say about various things that happen. Well, that's treason. I say, let's be careful. Treason is the attempted overthrow of a government. It can also mean more generically something that's a betrayal. But I think this may not constitute the legal definition of treason, but they are taking the choice of the American public and saying, we're going to take the decisions the president seeks to make, and we're going to subvert them. We're going to take them away from the president because this president can't be trusted. Generically, is it treason? And if it's not that, what is it?
Let's start with a betrayal of trust. I think partly, obviously, the trust of the president who has retained their services, but also the people, as you say, the people who elected, not all of them, obviously, but the majority of them in the Electoral College voted for this man to be the President of the United States. And to the extent that they're saying, well, listen, we support his policies, but not his implementation of his policies. We support the policies of John McCain, for example, which are not, by and large, the policies of the President of the United States. We have sort of taken it upon ourselves to be the arbiters of what policies will be implemented, whether, in fact, they conform to the President's direction or not. That all gets into a pretty gray area in terms of the Constitution of the United States and the duties that government officials have to follow the Constitution, to defend and uphold it, and so on. So, again, whether it qualifies technically as treasonous or not, I think is beside the point. It is deeply problematic, if not actually illegal, and I think the president is absolutely right to find it a betrayal of his trust.
And my concern is that Americans chose this president. They had the choice to choose John McCain. They didn't choose John McCain. There were many
several times, actually.
Several times. And there were many times that I disagreed with John McCain's stands on various issues.
Me
now,
too.
It seems as though this person has a bigger problem I've read and reread this thing that was published by the New York Times. It seems they have more problem with his style. They say, well, he changes his mind from time to time. Well, that's something new for American presidents, right? No, there are American presidents who've changed their mind about things. They say that he's fiery, or that he can
Impulsive.
go on rants. He's impulsive. Well, but that's what the American public chose. I think it is a betrayal of American voters, and it's a usurpation of the authority. American voters
very
had
good way
the
to
right
describe it.
to choose this president. People who work for the president, who swear an oath, to take their argument, though, where I think they've taken it, and I don't think I'm being unfair when they say, well, but when they take an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States, they say they're being true to the Constitution by subverting this president because this president is acting unconstitutionally. Should this person have done it this way, or should he have said, I quit, and I'm going to go out and write one with my own name on it and put that in the New York Times?
My personal view is this presidency has been sabotaged, not only by these sorts of folks who profess, in the words of this individual at least, to be good with his policies, but also the legions of people, many of whom had burrowed in during the Obama administration, as they say, became civil servants after they were political appointees and therefore were inherited by President Trump, who don't support his policies. And whether you support his policies but not the way he wants to pursue them, or whether you don't support his policies at all, you are a problem to the faithful performance of government service pursuant to your constitutional oath of office.
And I guess a person might say, well, the president is free to replace all those people, except that, as this person made clear, all of these people who are subverting the president are doing so covertly,
right,
while acting as true servants to the pretending to be true servants to the president, but at the same time actively undercutting him, or perhaps even, as we've heard, taking a letter, Bob Woodward's book, off the president's desk so he won't see it and can't sign it.
Right. This is part of the problem, as I've seen it from the earliest days of this administration. I think the president came into office without a team. Mm-hmm. He, as my friend Steve Bannon said, on like the second day, turned the keys of the personnel operation over to the Republican establishment. The Republican establishment was good with keeping lots of the so-called holdovers in place, and others who I believe have been put in place under their authority fall into the category of this individual, apparently, the resistance within. This has not served the American people well, I believe. I think this president has done an amazing job, despite all of this. Not perfect, let's face it, but an impressive job on a whole host of issues. Imagine what more he might have been able to accomplish if he weren't being sabotaged by the holdovers and or the establishment resistance within.
Frank, I got back to the room. We're in D.C., obviously. I got back to the hotel room, and I looked and I said, South Korea says that North Korea is saying, let's talk about denuclearization. Now, I know talk is just talk, but this is more than any previous president in the last 25 years has been able to get loose. At least they're talking about denuclearization. Now, perhaps it's a ruse, but I wanted to get your view on that as well before we run out of
Look,
time.
I'm deeply skeptical, I have to say. The North Koreans have made an art form of promising things that they don't do. What's different, Lars, which I think makes this a much more challenging problem even than a North Korea that is arming itself to the teeth and threatening us and lying about it, is the help that they are getting from the South Korean government. The government of South Korea today has not only in the president, but in many of his senior subordinates, people who are truly invested in a pro-North Korea policy. And that makes them a very unreliable partner for peace, and certainly for our security interests in South Korea, which are, let's recall, guaranteed by the lives of tens of thousands of American forces on the ground there.
Frank Gaffney founded and heads up the Center for Security Policy here in Washington, D.C. It's always a pleasure, Frank. Thank you very much.
Pleasure's
We'll be
mine.
back in just a moment. You're listening to The Lars Larson Show.